And you can hear that crack of the whip with that lightning strike. And by the way, it's Lightning Safety Awareness Week. And so when you get homeowners insurance, you're probably thinking about claims for flooding or earthquakes or strong storms. But lightning really doesn't kind of come to mind at times. Insurers paid over $1 billion, though, in lightning-related claims last year. It's time for another session of Market Meteorology. We're getting into the nitty-gritty of how weather impacts your wallet. I'm joined now by Fox Business Contributor Phil Flynn. And Phil, most people may not realize that they have lightning insurance already packaged in with their home insurance. Tell us the type of protection that actually offers.
Well, it offers pretty good protection for lightning strikes. The problem is you have to prove that whatever damage actually happened was caused by lightning, and that becomes an issue. I think most people don't even know, hey, do I have lightning insurance if my house gets hit? And the answer is probably yes. But that doesn't mean you're totally protected. You have to be really prepared that if you get hit by lightning, to take notes and document when it happened and why it happened, because that can mean a big difference when that insurance company has to write that check to you.
Yeah, and Phil, oftentimes, you want to just avoid this at all possible because it causes extensive damage. And one way you could do that is by installing lightning rods to protect your home. Do most insurances cover that, and at what cost?
Well, they will, believe it or not. But, I do have a story where I was in a subdivision. They were building a new house. It was a beautiful home, had these beautiful old-fashioned lightning rods, very decorative. The only problem was they forgot to ground them, not recommended. So it was like, please strike my house with lightning, please. That's not the way it's supposed to work. But believe it or not, I think the insurance company paid for that regardless. But yes, very, very much so. In fact, if you go to to your insurance company and say, hey, these are the things I'm going to do to protect my home from whatever your risk is, that lowers your risk to the company because it's less likely they're going to have to write you a check, and that could actually lower your monthly bill.
And so, of course, Phil, I know you said you have a place in Florida, so it's the lightning capital of the world. And so you started talking about how, this is something you definitely want to check with your insurance. But let's talk about Texas, actually. It tops the list for the most damage reported by lightning strikes. They have the highest average cost per claim at over $38,000. Would the higher risk impact the prices of someone's insurance, or does that just limit their payout?
It limits your payout. Listen, because of new technologies like surge protectors and lightning protection and companies being prepared more for these strikes, there's actually less claims than they were. But the cost of the claims are a lot higher. In a place like Texas, where you're widely spread out, the cost of fixing these places are more expensive than in a more dense area. So I think that's why you're seeing that as well. But I'll tell you, being in Florida, I've been through some pretty wicked lightning storms, and the intensity when you're in those type of storms is unlike you see in a lot of places. So when you're in a real lightning storm in Florida, you're in a lightning storm.
Oh, yeah. Growing up there, it was tough because you want to play sports on into the afternoon. And Phil, almost sometimes you get paralyzed because you're just like watching this, and there's that big boom, and it kind of rattles you and shakes you when you're watching this play out in Florida. I want to ask you about maybe this seems like a very specific case, but this happens if lightning hits a tree and then that ends up falling onto your home. Is that something that ends up being covered by insurance, or are there extra steps to filing a claim, something like that?
No, it actually does. If lightning strikes this tree and it goes into the ground and knocks out your equipment, it really does. I've been through this with the insurance companies personally. One time my house was hit. I don't know if it hit the ground or the chimney or both, but all of a sudden, boom, we had this big boom, power went out, and when the power came back on, all our electronics weren't working. The television was burned out. Things that were plugged in, the computers, the radios, it was plugged out. So we, at first, when we got all the damage, we were like, okay, we totaled it up. It's like, okay, is it going to be bigger than the deductible? Maybe we will replace it ourselves, was what we did. But what we found over time, there was a lot more damage than we knew about. There were electronics that we didn't use. And in fact, I remember I put in a CD I said, oh man, this band is really smoking. But it turned out to be the CD player was smoking. So it was a disaster. So there's a lot more damage than you knew. So if you do get hit by lightning, you lose things, make sure you check everything. Check the wiring, check all your equipment, because it may come back later that it was damaged, and you want to make sure that that gets covered.
That's such great advice. I'm sorry you had to go through all of that, but you learned a lot, right? You think about all the different electronics that are plugged in and they get fried during those type of events. By the way, we have an in-depth article on all of this, and you'll be able to find this interview after the show. So I encourage you to get over to foxweather.com to learn more about lightning. We are in the season, the peak season for all of this. So search this on our website, foxweather.com. Which states have the most lightning insurance claims? And you'll get a kind of in-depth analysis of this. Right now, though, we're going to be saying goodbye to our friend of the show and senior market analyst and Fox Business Contributor, Phil Flynn. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you so much, and stay safe.